Doopy.
Doop it up, bro.
Doopy McGodoop.
I'm super duper duped.
Butterscotch shenanigans.
Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the webs programmer.
And I'm Sam, and I'm the vector art programmer.
And before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show, so if you are sensitive, if you are under the age of 18, I suppose, just get out of here, leave. If you're a child, you shouldn't be listening.
Nope.
All right, so what's happening this week in the world of Butterscotch? Adam's up here visiting in St. Louis.
Again,
Sam,
yeah, in the last podcast I was here also.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then he went home.
And then I just came right back.
Came right back again.
Like a maniac.
But in the process of Adam leaving and coming back, Sam left and didn't come back.
Yeah, I'm over in the mountains in the East Coast.
And somehow we've all managed to experience some pretty zany and wacky global warming antics over the past week.
That's true. In our various musical cities game that we've been playing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Adam was in Dallas.
Yeah, so we suffered a bout of... Actually, the weather in Texas was very weird over the weekend. Yeah, over the last weekend. Where, across all of Texas, in a span of one day, it went from being basically 80 degrees, or 85 degrees, and super nice outside, to suddenly being full of tornadoes and 20 degrees cooler, to snowing in various parts of Texas and flooding in all the others.
Weird.
It all happened in the span of about 48 hours.
That's usually what happens when you slam a cold front into some hotness. Tornado happens.
Yeah, when you slap two fronts together.
You get yourself a goddamn twister.
Yeah, man, you slap your fronts together and things are going to get wet.
Things will get twisted.
Things will get
wet and twisted.
Yeah, and then over here in St. Louis right now, there's intense flooding happening. Flooding hasn't been this bad here since 1982, and it's worse.
But it's fortunately only happening in tents.
Yeah, it's if you were in a tent,
then you're just fucked right now.
Yeah,
very intense flooding.
Yeah, because of the intense flooding. Yeah, nice one, Adam. Really nailed that.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, and then also I had a weird moment where on December 26th, so the day after Christmas, I was outside. I was going to the gym, and it was raining for 3 days nonstop here. Thunderstorms and everything, which is weird in the middle of December, where usually it would just be everything covered with snow.
Yeah.
So these crazy intense thunderstorms. I walked through 3-inch deep water in the parking lot to get into the gym. Worked out in wet shoes. And then
which is gross.
Was going back home, and I had to fill my car up with gas, but it was nice enough outside still, temperature-wise, that I could just wear a t-shirt while juicing up my hog. Mm-hmm. So it was a bizarre
Seth is
moment.
He's one of the first hog riders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was juicing.
You got to keep the juice in your hog.
Well, then, so I got back yesterday evening, and I called Seth this morning.
Got back where, Sam? Where are you now?
I was in the mountains of Vermont, which I've never been to.
The Vermontans.
The Vermontans.
That's what they're known as.
It's covered in maple syrup. It's a maple syrup mountain.
Is Vermont, is that like a pseudonym for like Green Mountain? Like Verdant?
I think it actually just means
mountain.
I think it just means very mountain.
Very mountain.
It's Vermont.
It's very mountain.
The first settlers in Vermont arrived and they're like, this place very mountain.
Or they're like, it's very mountain. That's right.
Very mountain.
I was, either they were cavemen or rednecks.
They're forest people.
It's a mix of the two.
So we drove up there, and there's supposed to be snow on the mountains. Especially, we drove up on the day before Christmas Eve.
Especially in winter.
Yeah, especially in the dead of winter, there's supposed to be snow on the tops of the mountains at least. I mean, they're not huge mountains, but they are still mountains, and they have high enough elevation that you'd think that would be happening. And we were going up there to ski, so that's like the point of the trip, right? Is to go slap your skis on some slopes. And we're driving up, and we're just looking around, and there's about 2 hours in, we're getting closer and closer, and we're actually seeing the mountains, and we don't see any snow on them at all.
Like even on the peaks?
Even on the peaks. So we're just driving up, and everything's green. It was like it was springtime or something. And we finally get up to the resort, or like the little ski area, hotel place, and they only have 2 of the normal, 17 runs available to ski on because there's no snow. And apparently what they'd actually done was was when it had snowed like 10 days prior. It only snowed like 6 inches or so. But they take care of like dozing all of the snow out. And so they just collected all of it and then literally went and put it on the mountain so that they could at least have something for people to ski on. It wasn't cold enough. It has to be below 28 for them to make snow. Because they have these big pipes that like blast.
So they just carried snow and dumped it on the mountain.
Yeah, because they couldn't even make snow because it was so warm. And then the craziest thing was, so they only had these 2 runs open, and they had actually had like 50% cancellations for this week. Because, of course, everybody who was going to go up was like, I'm not going to go visit this place when I can't
ski on rocks and dirt.
So half the people canceled, but they were down, way more than half of the runs. And so as a result, the runs were actually totally packed with people skiing. Just like everybody was only on these 2 particular runs that you could go down. Yeah. And so what happened very quickly is at the top of the mountain, they had one run that was open at the top of the mountain, which is very hard, and then it came down and fueled into the smaller run that was available at the bottom, the easier one. And what happened very quickly is that the run at the top actually turned into basically like a sheet of ice. Because
everybody was just packing it down.
Yeah, it's warm enough,
and it's wet,
there's enough. Yeah, there's enough skiers. They just turn it into a sheet of ice, and so it was actually like skidding down the mountain. Like it was like your skis were actually skip as you went. Like they were just jumping over ice. So it was really intense, very fun. And we basically ended up just focusing on our tricks. So I had little stunt skis, and I had learned how to do like where you spin around.
The 360 no scope.
360 no scope. So I did some of those on the mountain. And then I was trying to show off for my fiance. So she was just a little bit behind me, and I went off the side of the run where it says like caution, don't go here.
And before I even continue, I just want to tell our listeners that it's universally a bad idea to try to show off while skiing.
Yeah. Well, here's what happened. So I go flying into this little, it's like a ditch basically. It's got snow in it. I go flying into it. And then I curve back out to come out of the ditch to jump, basically. And I don't actually know how to do this. I have no practice in doing this. So I hit the jump, and I decided before I went on this run that I was going to practice actually jumping with my legs when I hit one of these small ramps. So I do this, and I go what feels like 90 feet in the air. It's probably like 6 inches or so. My brain.
Yeah, you probably didn't go 90 feet.
No, my brain just totally freaked out though. So like I didn't have any in-air control. And so I just went
Did you just kind of go ragdoll?
Well, yeah. So I went flying out, and my center of gravity just, of course, went like backward behind me, and I just completely landed on my ass as my fiance was, going by. And she didn't actually realize it was me until she saw me flying through the air. And apparently, the way I held my butt, she was like, I didn't know that was you until I saw you flying, to your ass, and realized that was like the way you would fly. That's like your gait suggests
Sam's trademark.
Yeah,
ass out ragdoll.
So that was embarrassing, but I don't care. It was great. And then it was actually so cold the last day we were there. I was going down the mountain, that final run, and I just decided to go as fast as I could. And so I did that thing where you like square down on your skis and you get down super low and just fly down this thing, and I actually gave myself a brain freeze from like the air whipping around my head for so long.
You froze your brain from the outside.
Yeah, not from like a popsicle, but from the air itself, which was something to recover from afterward. But it was a great trip. It was really fun.
Well, damn. All I can say about all this is it's a good thing that global warming isn't real, because if it was, we'd be experiencing all of these things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it's all made up. And
it's a relief that all of the evidence point towards there not being global.
Yeah. And whatever evidence there is, it's anecdotal, all of it.
Just like these 3 stories. I mean, how could they possibly be connected if
they're all anecdotes? So therefore, you can't really use them. And otherwise, we just wrapped up Crashlands beta.
Yeah.
In manner of speaking. You want to talk about that, Adam, while I stand up for a moment? Because my legs are falling asleep.
We're sitting down, cross-legged or on our knees next to this laptop, and we're too old for that kind of shit.
Why don't you put it on the table?
We have these little tiny earbuds, and I don't have any ear flaps to hold them in, so I also have to hold the earbud into my ear hole with my hand. So
it's not an optimal setup, but it just is what it is. But back to beta.
Back to beta.
So the story here is that we started the beta, I guess 4.5 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. November
17, I believe. So we started the beta, and we knew it was going to be about 4 weeks, but we didn't really know exactly how long. It was, depend, of course, on how much feedback we got. We got a ton of feedback, and a lot of it was really good. A lot of it caused some pretty radical changes, actually, to the game. But those are all now basically just cleared. We've gone through the list of all of the major changes that we agreed with and wanted to implement for launch anyway, and those are all done. We've fixed.
I think we ended up with a good 25 pages of patch notes.
Yeah, lots of patch notes. So Seth has managed to fix basically every remaining little bug and stuff in the current patch that we're working on, the final patch. And now it's just a lot of like just tiny cleanup stuff. I mean, and it's a long list of tiny stuff, but none of it's a really big deal. It's just a bunch of, things that have to get done. So what that means is that we no longer need the huge amount of feedback and all that from our players. And in fact, our testers, appear to be very aware of this and have kind of slowed down on playtesting as well. So kind of the whole thing is just wound down.
Well, and they don't want to play it too much because they want to all replay it when it launches.
Yeah, when the game actually launches.
So
things are wound down, and today actually is the official graduation day for the beta. So all of our testers who put in some time and reported on how well things work on their devices and all that will be official graduates.
And they'll all be in the credits.
Yeah, they'll all be in the credits. So that's where we are now. And what that also means is that things are going to be pretty quiet for
3 weeks.
For 3 weeks.
Until launch, yeah.
Seth, you're yanking my earbud out.
Oh, sorry.
Yanking out his earbud.
Oh, this is a nightmare.
But for about 3 weeks, it's going to be super quiet. We launch in 4 weeks? Yeah, we launch in 4 weeks, which is crazy.
3 weeks from Thursday.
3 weeks from Thursday. So it's going to be really quiet until the press stuff starts because we don't, now the game's done, we don't have much else to say about it that we haven't already said until it goes live.
Wait, I have one thing to say.
What, Seth? Jesus.
Good job, guys. We did it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it took 2 years.
Yeah. We're pretty excited about this upcoming situation.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I think the next step we'll be working on is internally is various updates to Butterscotch ID and also to other fun sort of back-end stuff. And then all of the PR and contact wind up. So if you're fans of Crashlands and fans of our work and you have particular YouTubers or streamers who you like, go ahead and tweet at them the trailer of Crashlands, just because just having them have seen the trailer before we send them a cold email might actually help us a lot as far as them paying attention. So
so just yell at everyone.
Yeah,
yell Crashlands. Everyone's
yeah. If there's people you're fans of, go ahead and do that for us. That'd be a huge help. It'd be super cool.
I did see a great video that some guy posted. He tweeted at us. He's got a small channel where he just does some mobile game stuff, and he posted about his 3 most highly anticipated games coming up. And so he started with these 2 others, and then he ended it with Crashlands. But the way he introduced it was he goes, and last but not least is my most highly anticipated game of the year. And then he just put the clip, Sam, of you screaming Crashlands.
Awesome. Yeah, we're trying to figure it out.
When he was talking about it in his video, I saw he kind of ran into the same problem that we have been running into, which is how to describe it.
Yeah.
He was like, oh man, it's amazing. It's like, it's there's creature taming. It's an RPG. It's an adventure. There's stories. There's crafting and base building. And he just kept listing all kinds of stuff.
Which is always what we've done in the past.
Yeah. But clearly he couldn't quite pin it down in a genre, which I think is good. In terms of it being its own unique thing, but it does make it hard to.
I think to describe.
I was thinking about maybe. I mean, what do you guys think about calling it a story-driven adventure crafting RPG? Is that just too many damn? I mean, I feel like
that sums it up pretty well.
That's like it,
That sounds good.
Okay, we'll use that from here on. Well, so the other thing is I actually posted one of our friends, the guys who make Simple Planes, which by the way you guys should get on. It's available on Steam and on Google Play and iTunes. You build your own planes and fly them around.
And it's simple.
They just launched Simple Planes on Steam 2 weeks ago, and we had a really fun chat with them about their launch and kind of how they handled things. And they suggested that we put our trailer up on r/videos on Reddit, and they're like, yeah, we got like a lot of traction there because our trailer was funny. And we're like, well, people think our trailer's funny. So just randomly, I threw it up there.
Some people, though, get really mad about our trailer.
I mean, you're doing something right on the internet. You're interneting correctly if you get hate mail. I think it's just what the state thinks is, So
or at the very least, you are existing.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're
getting hate mail.
Yeah. So we posted the trailer on the r/video subreddit, and it didn't make it to the front page of Reddit, but it got to the top position on the videos subreddit, and ended up getting another almost doubled the amount of views. So we're over 115,000 views, I think, on the trailer.
Pretty good.
Which is awesome. So there's a lot more people who've seen it. In the next one, we are working on another trailer, which will be similarly ridiculous for launch, actually. So that's something fun to look forward to.
Cool. So other than that, we wanted to when we first started doing the podcast, we would always spend a little bit of time each episode talking about some other games that we've been playing.
Games that weren't our games.
Yeah. And just to kind of talk a little bit about the mechanics in those games and what makes them interesting or not interesting. So we wanted to bring that segment back. And that segment is called, Here's Some Games That We're Playing. Let's talk about it.
we thought long and hard about the name.
Especially, and Adam and I both over this past week, since it's been Christmas time, there's been family around, and we haven't gotten to get a lot of work done. So we've been digging through our Steam libraries, which are overflowing with things that games we haven't finished.
Not only that, it's the winter Steam sale.
I actually need to go get some stuff.
So everything is $1 for some reason.
Yeah, I bought some games for real cheap.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the games that we've been playing.
Okay.
All right.
Let's talk about Magicite.
Yeah, Magicite. So my wife and I played this a couple weeks ago, and then Sam and I played it when I was in St. Louis this last time. And it's probably been out for a year, I think. I think it was in early access for a while on Steam. And it's what would you call it? It's a
roguelike. It's
a
roguelike platformer.
Platformer, yeah, with a sort of
crafting-based progression.
Crafting component, yeah. So you progress. You do it. There's a leveling system and all that, but you also progress through crafting, where you have to chop down trees and harvest ore to build weapons and armor and so on. And it's actually kind of a fun mix, because the crafting itself is actually super simple. There aren't that many things you even can craft. But instead of just having the sort of the normal RPG style where you kill a thing and loot pops out, and then it's either usually worse but sometimes better, right? It has some like interesting traits or something. Instead of doing that, they basically just added this extra thing that you have to do, which is this very simple crafting. And so it feels like it makes it feel like you do work to get in
a good way or in a bad way?
Actually, in a good way.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and it actually doesn't feel very grindy, because it's still most of the focus is still on like the random bigger drops, right? So you actually don't need that many of anything, but all the things are kind of rare. And so if you play through a few levels, you're likely to find the kind of stuff you need to continue progressing.
So this, I think, is really interesting, because for those of you who are listening who saw the talk that I gave about automated crafting systems, this might sound a little bit familiar, but
I believe you can find on our YouTube channel.
It's on our YouTube channel, yeah. But basically, so what I find interesting about that fact that finding all these different resources and slapping them together to make something like that, it makes it feel like you're doing work and like you're producing something cool out of real parts and stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a crafting game like this, what if you had something like, okay, so in Diablo, you get gold from everything, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if no items ever dropped other than gold.
Right.
And you just bought items with that gold, right? That becomes a lot less interesting somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though effectively it's the same, right?
Yeah,
which is like you're just getting stuff out of enemies and parts and stuff that you are then exchanging for an item.
But even in Diablo and in similar games, most of the things that drop, which aren't gold, right? But most of those things you then convert into gold through a merchant so that you can use them to buy better stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So somehow those things being sort of abstracted in another layer into basically a multiple forms of currency, which is all resources are in a game, right? There's like, if you have like 50 different types of resources, really there's just 50 different types of currency that you use to quote, buy stuff through your crafting menu in different ways.
Right.
But those different levels of rarity and like different ways to get those currencies is what makes the crafting interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing I found about playing Magicite, so it's the huge drawback I see with it is actually that the UI that they built for handling the inventory and for handling the crafting, as our chief goal was with Crashlands to remove, the UI that they built is so terrible, I guess.
It's a clunky UI.
I have yet to see a good one though, frankly.
Well, so in this case, I mean, you don't actually know what the recipes are that you need to do.
That was actually the thing is when I played it for the first time, because it's very hard and it's all randomly generated, but it's not randomly generated with any sort of like difficulty curve intention. So it's just randomly difficult, effectively. So I found at the very beginning, because I didn't know any recipes, it was literally impossible and very frustrating.
Did you have to look it up?
Yeah, I went and memorized all the basic recipes.
I tried to play Magicite for about a half an hour, but I couldn't figure out how to craft anything.
So that's exactly, exactly.
And then I was like, well, whatever.
Yeah, they don't have a recipe list, so you don't actually know what the hell to do. Which, if you did, even just to start, like how to basically craft a thing, it would help a ton. And instead, they try to essentially the way that the crafting works is actually you only use 2 components, and they have to be in separate slots in your inventory. So even if it's a case that it's literally the recipe is like wood plank plus wood plank, you have to first split your stack of wood planks, which they don't tell you how to do. So you gotta I think it's right click or shift click or something, which just splits it completely in half, and then put that in a separate inventory slot, and then you have to shift click on both of those items at the same time, and that will combine them. But it doesn't tell you that it will combine all of them into that new thing. So suddenly you've created like 80 sword handles when you just wanted to make one.
Yeah.
And you can't.
This reminds me of, so I tried to play Minecraft when it first came out, like 5 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. And
I had the same problem with the crafting because, once again, you have to actually lay out individual components in a pattern in order to build something. Terraria does the same thing where you just have to have the particular components in your inventory, and then it shows you what you can build out of those. But at no point do you get to see what's possible to build, right? I have to wonder, because whenever I play a space game, I'm always pissed off at how abundantly overcomplicated every interface element is. But that just seems like a constant feature of space games. Is it just the case that people have just somehow sort of implicitly decided that crafting games should never tell you how to make stuff? Is that
well? I think part of it
is
like
a thing.
Well, part of it I think is if they're going for their survival feel, right? Part of the thrill, supposedly, of that particular form of gaming is essentially in the figuring out of how or what to combine, that sort of thing, right? But the reality is
it though?
Yeah, that's my point. I think the reality is that it's less interesting to struggle to figure out how to build a damn wood plank than it is to figure out what you're going to do with that wood plank later. Like essentially plan and forecast for the future, and then work on completing that plan.
Yeah, and it's so binary too, because either you have things set up properly to make the wood plank or you don't. It's not like you can make half of a wood plank on accident and be like, ooh, I'm on the right track now. If I do this other thing, I can finish making, It's either you've just accidentally randomly assemble things correctly or nothing happens at all.
I find that similar with Minecraft as well, because Minecraft, like Seth noted, you have to actually put stuff in sort of the right orientation so that they it's almost like you draw a picture using components of the thing you want to make.
Yeah.
But of course, there are a jillion ways to draw any particular thing. And so even once I had figured out how to do something, it was actually very hard for me to remember exactly the right way to orient it. Because I was like, you can basically make something that's sort of shaped like an H or shaped like a U or shaped like an N. And like one of those might make something, the other one might make something else.
I think like a U shape is like a vest and an N is pants.
Right.
Or something.
Well, if it's a certain kind of resource, otherwise, and then an H shape is either a ladder or armor.
Wait. An N is pants?
An N is in
a
like
lowercase N. Like basically like a hump.
A hump.
Like legs going down and then across the top, and then because it's a 3x3 grid.
I was thinking a capital N, and I was like, what is this? Pants as viewed from like thrown on the floor with both legs out.
It's just like a messy tangle of iron pants. Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing I noticed about Magicite, I think they did a lot of things right, because Adam and I, once we got into it, just enjoyed the shit out of it. I played it for about
it was basically
4 hours straight.
Well, I mean, Minecraft is the same. Terraria is the same. Once you get past having to Google how to do absolutely everything in the game,
then it's super fun.
Once you know how to play it, then it's fun. But why do these games just make no effort? Like,
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I do think part of it is they fall on the idea that this survival genre is like what you're supposed to do in some sense. Like it's supposed to be, I can't. What do I combine to make the next thing? Which I personally think is just kind of useless. But I think a further point in talking about Magicite, and Adam and I both had this feeling, for those of you who played Narwhal Online or have seen the video of it, the game we made for a game jam last year, which was a roguelike, our next plan is to make some sort of roguelike as our next sort of larger title. And we've talked about kind of various game loops to build in so that you get that feeling of always progressing, even though your character's being straight up murdered every single time.
And we already had that with like Quadrupus Rampage, right? Where there's the metagame progression that you die every time, but you actually level up outside of the game.
Yeah, there's the masteries, the upgrades, the pets.
Right. Yeah. And one interesting thing I know about Magicite, so it is a roguelike, and it's it's more pure in the sense that you can unlock new character types, like new races to play as, and unlock new hats and stuff, which give you it's a sort of really soft external metagame that you don't actually have much control of, because all those changes are done via essentially by achievements of some sort inside the game. But one thing I thought that they could have done, they should have done, so in between each level, so you run around, you like chop your trees down, whenever you fight stuff, and you get to the end, and when you get to the end, you go through a door, and it takes you to what essentially is a little town.
Yeah.
And I think narratively, it's supposed to be the idea that you're kind of going through. It's basically the same town over and over again, which is fine. But it's essentially like you're kind of hopping between these settlements, and they all have like a blacksmith and like all these various characters and that sort of thing who all have their shops. And I was like, how cool would it have been if kind of like in a sense in like Rogue Legacy, if you actually got to build up that town permanently,
upgrade
right?
the town, yeah, exactly.
Which would upgrade the stuff you can get, which would let you get further and further, that sort of thing. And there's just none of that. And
instead, it's kind of, isn't it like you have a picture of a castle or something?
In Rogue Legacy,
it's just kind of like a talent tree, basically.
Yeah, and in that one, I think we've talked about Rogue Legacy a little bit before, but that one, like, their loops get so weird and long because of their whole gold stealing mechanic that it becomes basically impossible. But I mean, they at least had the idea there, which is this, they give you this feeling of upgrading the town from which you're going to and
so you don't feel like you're starting from scratch every time.
Well, it's also a way to make the game loops a little bit less naked. You know, instead of just like, I have spent XP on a progress bar and now I have bigger numbers. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, the blacksmith now has better tools to build you better weapons with, or whatever. So it's it's a little bit more lore rich,
right?
Instead of just numbers.
It starts building out a bit more of a world, right? And I think that was my one, besides the UI and the sort of complete opaqueness with regard to their recipe system, I think I just wish they did more with it, because I think...
Is it in early access? No, it's out.
It's out. I think he's not working on it anymore. He's working on another title called
But I'm pretty sure, because it came up my Steam queue over and over again for a long time. I think
Same here.
Yeah, on policy, I don't play early access games, so I'm pretty sure, because every time I saw it, I was like, oh, this looks interesting, but I think it was in early access for a long time or something.
Well, speaking of policies, I have a new policy.
What's
What's that, Seth?
So a few days ago, I was like, I'm going to download a few mobile games because I haven't really done any mobile gaming in ever.
Yeah,
so,
I haven't for a long time.
So I started looking through the list, and I downloaded a bunch. And I was playing through them, and I just went kind of through sort of the top charts area to see, what was trending. This is on Google Play. And every single one I played was extraordinarily simple, no depth whatsoever, and just begging for money constantly.
Yep.
And I was just like, what in the hell? And then I realized, oh, right, I just downloaded a bunch of free games.
Yeah.
And of course, we always are talking about how, people need to be more willing to spend money on the things that they like. And I was like, shit, I'm part of the problem here. Like, I was like, I want to play some games. I just downloaded a bunch of garbage and then deleted it off my phone in 10 minutes.
Yep.
So I just decided that I'm not going to download free mobile games anymore. Yeah. If I want to play a mobile game, I'm gonna check out the reviews and buy it.
That's good.
So I'm only going to be looking at the paid charts. And I think it basically comes down to the question of whether or not the game has in-app purchases that break the game's loops.
Yeah.
Like, I'm also okay with like downloading a free game that has like a full version upgrade concept or whatever, because that's just like a one-time thing. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, games where you have to continue paying forever to play the game as it was meant to be played are garbage.
That's fair.
I have no interest in that, unless it's a case like it's different in the case of like an MMO or something where there's a whole server architecture that's to be maintained, and where I feel like
even in those, I will not play one unless there's a subscription.
Yeah,
right. Just like because that exists outside of the game's mechanics, outside of the loops. You're just paying for access. You're not paying like to become the best at the game or whatever.
Yeah, because so in that context, it makes sense. It's basically like paying to unlock. And yeah, you have to do it as a subscription, but it makes sense because of what the game is.
It's expensive to run the game.
It's expensive for the developers to run the game.
Right.
But yeah, so it actually has been the case that I, in the past anyway, but don't really play free-to-play games.
Right.
But all the games that I play regularly that I actually enjoy are games that I had to actually pay for. And I actually had once, maybe I guess about a year ago, on Steam, I suddenly started noticing that all of a sudden a bunch of things are free to play on Steam now.
Yep.
And they're getting to be a lot more of them. And for a while I was trying a few of them because I was like, oh, these kind of look interesting. But universally and without fail, they were worse than games that you buy up front.
Yeah.
Every fucking time. There was, there are a few exceptions for MMOs.
I think maybe,
but those same MMOs are very good.
Some MOBAs are, are good.
Well, I think,
and I think all MOBAs use a free-to-play model.
They do, yeah.
We've talked about this before a bit, which is that, I'm not, so I think in the case of free-to-play mobile games, if you're talking about, like, multiplayer games, so Clash of Clans actually is a good example.
Yeah.
Games that have a multiplayer component built in, I think, in my mind, have a natural complexity and interestingness to them that makes it so that if they're free to play, who gives a shit, right? Which is why MOBAs work as free to play, because while they completely lack any sort of depth as far as lore goes, or any sort of world building, because they literally can't in a MOBA context, because all that exists is the arena.
Well, Clash of Clans is timer based, right? Like you have to pay sort of like dollars per day to get rid of timers. Isn't that?
I think there's
you get
timers
gems
and building stuff and
But
pretty much every aspect of the game.
So to me,
is
like if that was a
monetized.
subscription thing where it was like, okay, you're going to pay $5, $10, whatever dollars a month to play that game, then I would say, like, okay, that's fair. I can decide yes or no. I'm willing to spend that much money for because I totally
honestly,
agree
if Clash of Clans was a subscription game, I'd play it.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah,
but I think the point there is that the free to play game that has a multiplayer component, I think naturally is going to have enough complexity in my mind to warrant or to be enjoyable to play because of the fact that it has people involved. Whereas if you're going to look at it,
I don't understand. What does it have to do with free to play?
Because if it's a free to play mobile game that is strictly single player, then I think that's where, because what Seth was talking about, where he's like, oh, there's like no depth here of mechanics, and they're just asking me for money constantly. There's not much rich interaction going on. My argument's that in a multiplayer context.
So you're saying it's worth all the other horrible stuff if it's a rich enough game?
If I'm saying that multiplayer as an aspect of the game can add a level of richness to it that makes it so it feels totally worth it to do the free play thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe. Like to
I
me,
still agree that it would be better.
I would argue very differently, which is that the reason that a multiplayer game, like an online MMO style game, or one where you have to like find competitors amongst a huge list, right? Those make sense as free to play just to maintain a large player base.
Right.
That to me makes sense. And if you have some sort of a payment model that allows a player to say, here's the level of commitment I have to this game, right? And sort of mark it by buying a thing. So if you look at like MOBAs, if you look at League of Legends, where you can say, I fucking love this game, I want to have access to these particular characters that I otherwise wouldn't have access to, permanently, then you go spend the $5 or whatever to buy that thing. And then, you like over years, you either buy all of them or a handful or none, right? But you get to have the exact same gameplay experience otherwise as everybody else in terms of your, minute to minute gameplay.
Right, yeah.
Stuff is the same. But when you play something like Clash of Clans, your gameplay is literally different from somebody else if you haven't thrown down $100 today.
Right.
It's like,
no, that's very true.
And I can't just play that game and be like, okay, I'm willing to commit $10 to this game and then feel like I'm not being bothered by the game anymore to give them even more money.
Well, yeah, because the $10, that's just like seed money.
Yeah,
like you can't just go, I'm willing to spend $10 on this game and then no more.
Yeah,
because that'll get you started.
Yeah, but
then there's so much more stuff you would need to pay for.
And so I think, and what that comes up to then is that there's a kind of game that's not actually free to play. It's possible to pay infinite money into. Right. Or at least really vast sums of money, hundreds or thousands of dollars a month kind of money. And to me, like on that kind of game, I am not willing to play.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
We have a friend here who I won't name, but who was a big fan of Puzzle and Dragons when that game was cruising around in the top charts. Yeah. Which
actually I played a little bit. It was pretty fun.
It's a pretty good game. Yeah. But he confessed to me that he had to quit playing it because he had spent over $650 in it.
Yeah. Which just
and it was just like every time he booted it up, he was throwing money down.
Well, I think so. I was thinking about this weekend. I've been trying to figure out how to basically what stuff for the new year. One of my resolutions is to essentially spend less money on stuff and get more of a stable financial situation going. And so I was just trying to think about, and I think Seth or Adam, one of you had asked about this even just like a week ago, where I had the realization that there's no way that you can actually get completely free of like the month-to-month payments that you have to make for various things in life.
Yeah, your
there's
life has a subscription service fee.
Well, yeah, it has like a free to play. Being
alive.
alive. Where it's like, I mean, I'm not talking about groceries. I'm talking about
being
like,
alive is not free to play.
No, but I'm talking about like if you like
it's
buying
infinitely
a house.
pay to play, as we just discussed.
It's also
right.
It's like Clash of Clans.
It's like Clash of Clans because I was like, the next thing I want to do is like get a house that I actually own, because that way I both have that sunk capital in a thing. Which is cool, but then also my monthly payments will be lowered for various things. And I was like, well, there's still property tax and insurance, even if you totally take care of the payment of the thing in one go,
and maintenance and everything else.
Yeah, and then I was like, shit, like there's never going to be a time where I'm able to just not pay anybody. Like there's not a level cap, I guess, which is what I was kind of, I don't know why, but I always thought that was the case. Like you could just be like if you made it enough, you could just like be done having to deal with things.
No, there is no end game level cap.
Well, I mean, there is in the sense that if you have enough money so that it's just generating money on its own,
then it'll
take care of all of those.
Yeah,
things.
You'll be effectively spending nothing.
Yeah, because on balance, you as a human will have to do literally nothing.
But you'll still need to think about it.
Yeah. You never get to stop worrying about whether or not someone is stealing your money, or whether you're going to have enough, or whether you have enough insurance to cover all the horrible shit that can happen, like global warming and cancer. So, you just
shit happens.
Yeah,
you just gotta keep playing the game.
Well, anyway, on that note, let's get to some questions. So every week we answer questions from our players and listeners through podcast.bscotch.net. And they also vote up questions to the top, so we just take the most highly voted questions and work our way down the list.
Yeah, so go over there and ask a question and vote for other ones.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
You can also listen to all of our podcasts on that same page.
And you should.
All right, I'm gonna take the questions today. So here you go. You guys ready?
Super ready.
Hold on, you go ahead. My ass is asleep. I gotta stand up.
Seth needs to stand up for a moment. I'll go ahead and ask the question.
Flex your cheeks.
we'll go from there. Okay, first question from Lucky Strike Guy 2. I don't know what happened to Lucky Strike Guy 1.
There's a story there. He died.
There's probably some sort of a story there.
He wasn't lucky.
It seems there's no I in Lucky Strike Guy, so it seems unlikely that Lucky Strike Guy as a normal username was already taken. So for some reason, he's
Or it was.
Maybe it was. But anyway, so he asks, what was your biggest disappointment when you played a game that you had high expectations for, and why?
Oh God, don't get me started on Fallout 4 right now.
Too bad. I want you to get started. Get started on Fallout 4.
I'm so aggravated. It's like there's this beautiful garden. Okay, here I'm gonna make a metaphor that probably won't work, but we're gonna go for it. So there's this beautiful garden. Okay, and it's got this high admission fee. Everybody's been talking about it. I've seen pictures of funny things happening in said garden. It seems like a great place to go and hang out.
This is a weird garden.
I'm like, okay, I only have...
Wait, are there radishes?
There are radishes. There's everything you could possibly want in this garden, right? I mean, like, you've been in a few other gardens like it before that were really fun.
I can't think of any gardens I've been in that were like this one.
But that's where the disappointment comes from. So you pay, you save up some money, and you're like, okay, I can only go, I only have like a certain amount of money to go
to
into
these
these gardens.
There are only a few gardens I can go into at any time.
Yeah, and this one has to be one of the more expensive ones, but you're like, okay, everyone's talking about it. The rave is huge. There's so much stuff going on. I'm going to go in here. And you pay at the door, and you notice when you pay that like even just the front gate to get into the thing isn't really lubed up very well. Okay, so you pay.
It's like a creaky hinges.
Yeah, you go and you're pushing on this gate
but
door.
Does
just
that
to get
add
in.
character, or does it take away from the experience?
It didn't add character. I'm just gonna say it did. Okay. I mean, this is squeaking like. It's not like we're not talking
also,
about.
you scraped yourself on the gate and got tetanus from it.
Yeah, so it's
instantaneous tetanus.
It's a tetanus-riddled screamer of a gate, and you push it open, and you're like, okay, but I'm in this garden now, so maybe that was just a fluke. Because gates are hard to maintain, sure.
And plus, everybody's been talking about it.
Everybody's been talking about the garden, not about the gate. We'll move on from that. So you go walking in, and the path on, you're trying to see all these beautiful things that they built, these beautiful sculptures and these hedges and stuff. But just the path that you're walking on is just the dumbest path. You just it's uneven terrain. There's spikes sticking out of it on occasion.
Rusty nails.
It's like someone just shit all over the path. And
actually, someone did shit all over the
someone literally shit on the path, and at one point
not
you
even
step
like
in it. Yeah. At one point you step in it, and then you
now
have to
you're
like
walking around with shit on your shoes.
yeah, you gotta go and take off your shoes and like start back, earlier in the gate because you had a shit stepping moment. Which in my case in Fallout 4 was I sat down at a computer console to hack it and then stood up and my character was just falling. I mean, I was standing on the ground, but he was falling, and so I couldn't do anything. And
it was a buggy, bug-induced.
Yeah, and I was like, how the fuck? How? What?
Before you continue on this, I want to throw in another bug that I haven't played it yet, but I watched my wife play it. And at some point, she tapped my shoulder and was like, and just pointed at her screen. And there was a cat, a live cat, which is cool that they have cats in this version of the game. And there was a live cat just sitting on a desk, and it had a newspaper just inside of it, like a horizontal flat piece of paper, just like effectively sort of cutting the cat in half, but not actually cutting it in half. The cat was fine. It just had a newspaper just stuck through its middle.
It's actually
walking around with his newspaper.
Yeah, it was a little bit immersion breaking.
Common denizen of the wasteland,
Yeah,
radioactive newspaper cats.
Paper cat.
But yeah, so you walk through this garden and like you've been there now for maybe 4 hours, and you're actually just confused at this point because not only was it kind of bumpy getting in, but while there's so much cool stuff that you could go explore, the process of going to explore it is so clunky and covered in shit that
because when you're exploring this garden, you have to keep on putting little pebbles in your pocket.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing, right? So
your pockets are little, and then after a while, your
pants explode.
Your pants are just fucking full of pebbles. And you're like, I guess I better go back to my pebble deposit.
Right.
Yeah. You can only walk around through the garden for 8 seconds before you got to take a trip back to Pebbletown.
So yeah,
it's becoming less of a metaphor and just a weird description.
I guess my point with Fallout 4 is that there's so much like fantastic content, and I'm serious about that. Like the locations are super cool. The ones I got to, the stories are fun. Like the characters, at least at first blush, seem interesting. There's lots of stuff going on in the world, but literally the interaction to get you there is so clunky that it is just shocking. I mean, like I turned on the dialogue subtitles, right? So I can read the text quickly as opposed to having to listen to
the same experience, by the way.
And
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, goddamn it. Like every time when I would be talking to someone, first of all, that camera that they use for the dialogue cutscenes is so damn weird. Where like you control it somehow with your mouse, and usually that means that the other character is like out of the screen. He's just out of the frame. And so you're not looking at this person. And then what happens with the subtitles is you'll click to, move the text forward, but the subtitle text will stay as it was for the previous piece of conversation. So you can't actually read the next piece of the story because of this bug, which seems like, frankly, a very easy to find and fucking enormous bug.
I actually had a problem where there was one particular phrase that some random character said as I was like walking past, and then that replaced all of my subtitles forever. And so every time I talked to somebody, it would just like say this random ass thing, the same thing every time, no matter who was talking, where I was. I tried restarting the game, saving and loading. I tried going to a new zone and talking to a new set of characters. Nope, sorry, I just ripped out of Zero Buddy.
And like, I mean. And as a dev, I mean, like I'm totally, I can put up with bugs for days, but it wasn't actually just the bug. I mean, bugs are bugs, it's fine, but it wasn't the bugs. It was that the interactions themselves, like I said, that camera. Like, whose fucking idea was that to make that a mobile thing?
Their actual design.
And then like the UI, handling the UI for, I mean, the perks UI is now a completely separate like wall of these characters, which is weird and comes out of fucking nowhere. And then like you access it through your Pip-Boy, but it's not flavored in the same way that Pip-Boy is. So
it feels like a menu instead of a interface in your Pip-Boy.
Yeah, and then you have your inventory, which is, as you said, like a tiny pocket just full of boulders that you have to empty every 3 minutes. And they did great jobs in some of the design pieces that moved the game, I think, forward a lot, which is like the crafting system and stuff, but didn't essentially then rewind and update all the other systems to account for that, like the fucking inventory system. So now you have to pick up everything in the wasteland to make progress.
But you can't carry it.
Yeah.
But you can't
Yeah.
So I was so disappointed.
Nobody can even claim realism on this because people are always like, it's not realistic to think that you can carry it. That's my Fallout nerd impression.
It's pretty good.
But the thing is, you can carry 300 pounds of shit. before you can't carry anything else. Which, if it was really realistic, I think maybe at like 25, 30 pounds, your character would start to sort of like break
slow down.
Yeah, slow down. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'll say for me, my biggest disappointment was Warlords of Draenor, World of Warcraft. I'll use an analogy as well. So imagine every night you go bowling with your friends.
Okay.
You got like 15 friends. And you just go bowling and you chilling and drinking and just having a great time every night for like 10 years.
Fantastic.
And then the bowling alley is like, hey, everybody, we got this fucking sweet new bowling app that will improve your bowling experience. It's $50 and everybody's going to be buying it. And you're like, okay, sure. And all your friends are like, fuck yeah, this sounds great. So everybody buys this bowling app, and here's what it does. You open it up once a day, you click a button, and it goes, you bowled. Here's what your score was. And that is how you bowl now. That is your bowling experience. And whenever you go to the bowling, if you're like, man, I kind of miss the old days when I actually went and physically bowled. When you go to the bowling alley, nobody's there because everybody's at home once per day clicking on a thing that says, you bowled, here's your score. That is what Warlords of Draenor is. That's the World of Warcraft expansion, the latest one. So, they just removed the whole game and replaced it with a button, basically. Pretty big disappointment. So,
that sounds pretty bad.
It's real fucking bad. Anyway,
Adam, what about you?
Actually, I can't really say that there was a game that I was super excited about that was then really disappointed by. I think, and I tend to approach games pretty pessimistically in the first place. Like I don't expect a lot from them. But the ones that I get really excited about tend to be, Valve games and that kind of thing.
And they tend to deliver.
Which deliver, yeah. So I haven't played. So I mean, I've been very excited about Fallout 4, and I haven't actually played it yet. So
it's probably why you haven't been disappointed.
that may be my first case of that. But I also, I can put up with a fair bit when it comes to these kinds of games if the things that I like about them are still there and still well done. So Fallout New Vegas, for example, I may actually like more than Fallout 3, but there are actually a lot of aspects of it that I just like. I definitely like less than Fallout 3. But I'm willing to put up with those because the other things they did that are better enough that then it's then worth the experience.
Right.
So I'm hoping that for me Fallout 4 is the same way.
Have you guys found that just most games that you play now you find somewhat disappointing? Has that been happening? Because
well, actually, that has been happening to me for a long time until this past weekend when I just took a different approach to the thing where it was just like I decided just to treat games as exactly what they are and try not to worry about whether they were like good or anything like that. Just
perfect.
Just to play the thing and try to figure out like what the dev was trying to do. And actually just kind of ignore whether they succeeded, right? I think from a developer standpoint, it's then worth exploring whether they did succeed and why or why not, or succeed. But trying to play it as a player, just try to think like, what is it they're trying to do? And then try to play it from that kind of perspective. And then so I played a bunch of little games and stuff. There were a few that I wasn't so much disappointed by. I was just like, I see what this game is doing. I'm not interested. Right.
Right.
But for the most part, even those games, and there were a few like, take Pixel Piracy, which I was originally going to talk about in our section on games we're playing. Because I played maybe like 7 hours of that a few weekends ago. And because I just bought it on Steam for like $2, so wanted to give it a shot. Again, Steam's been recommending it to me for months. It's by the same people who make Terraria, and I like Terraria. And it's just this game that's it's rough around every edge that it could be rough around.
It's just made of rough.
It's made of roughness. But I decided my first 10 minutes of gameplay were really not good. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of ignore that and just really try to figure out how to play this game. And so I gave it another half hour or hour, and then I finally, once I figured out how all the systems worked, even though it was harder than it should have been, it ended up actually being a fun game to play. And I actually enjoyed the crap out of it. And after a while, I felt like the game wasn't going to change anymore, and so then that was the end. But I got a good, 7 hours of gameplay out.
Pretty good for $2.
Yeah, and it's I think part of the problem has been that as game designers, what my goal has always been when we talk about the games that we're making is how can we make sure that the player has the best intro experience into this, they always know what's happening and so on, which I think is absolutely the right developer move. But I started approaching the games that I was playing in the same way as kind of like what I expected our own players to do, right? Which is to say, anytime the game doesn't make it easy for me to understand what's supposed to be happening, just to be pissed that the developer fucked up, right?
Right.
And then to treat that as like as a thing that made the game bad, instead of as a thing that made onboarding into the game bad.
Right. The game might still be great.
Yeah, the game once
you just
once
have to
you figure
figure
it out.
out.
Yeah, so like the developer, failed at making the game easy to get into, which again is bad. Like they shouldn't be doing that. But it used to be the case back when, forever ago when I would play games, like it would be a thing that I saved up money for and I would buy. We talked about this in previous episodes. And no matter what, I would like spend hours trying to figure out how the game worked. No matter how poorly it was presented how it was supposed to work,
Right.
I would spend hours figuring that thing out. And
But
so
also,
I'm trying to go
like,
back
that
to
was
that mindset.
that was the only game that you would have that month.
Yeah, exactly. And so
So-
because of the ease of access to games,
We've become less patient.
yeah,
with that.
like I realized that a lot of my distaste and disappointment in games comes from that same thing, which is just that
right.
I'm no longer giving them the opportunity to have rough edges.
You're just being an entitled boob hat.
Exactly. So I tried to stop doing it. And there are some games that I played as I've been going back through my Steam library to play stuff I've never played yet. There's definitely been a bunch of things that people have raved about and whatever that when I got into, I gave it what I thought was a full chance, like an hour or two of gameplay. And I was just like, nope. This is really not doing what people seem to think it's doing.
I think it's pretty hilarious to think though that like when you go watch a movie is like 90 to 180 minutes or 120 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen the whole thing and that's it. Like you don't need to give it 2 hours before you decide whether or not to try, like really give it a real shot.
Oh, and there's nothing even you don't have to
You
interact
just
with
sit
it.
there and it just does things.
It does things at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know.
But then also people
weird.
don't just walk out of movies, like almost. Even like if you're watching Netflix and stuff, there's actually like a movie has to be pretty bad for me to like get 20 minutes into it and then be like, fuck this and turn it off.
Yeah, it'd be
Like,
really
I still
bad.
do that sometimes, but it has to be pretty damn bad,
Yeah.
So like I'm willing to sit
But that's
through
because
a
it's
media
so
movie.
that's because it's so easy to just sit there and wait for it to get better. Like in a game, you have to do stuff. Like you have to go out of your way and work at it to get through the shitty part,
Yeah.
It's not going to just get better on its own while you just watch it.
Yeah.
So
It gets better by you by putting work into it.
yeah.
And I think that's
Well, I think there's an interesting article I read on Polygon today by, I think, one of their editors who said his New Year's resolution is actually to play fewer games. And he's making this exact same argument. He was like,
yeah.
I realized that the most fun I've had playing a game was when I played the shit out of like
Yeah,
one
when
or
you
two
like
of them.
try to complete a game or something.
Yeah, like really complete it. And so he was like, as much as I can, that's basically what I'm going to do this next year. is
Yeah,
actually
try
just
to
focus.
play more of fewer games. I think that's a good strategy. I'll be doing something similar, I think.
Agreed. All right, I think we got time for one more question.
One more? All right, let's do it. So the next question comes from Racing for the Finish, who we haven't heard from in a while. I guess maybe he's been on the bottom of the charts.
He's been busy. He's an engineer at NASA and stuff, so
He's got shit on his plate.
Yeah, he's busy.
Not real shit. Metaphorical
Yeah, that would be pretty bad if he had shit on his plate.
shit. Yeah. So he asks, if answered before December 18, what is your best guess as to the plot of the upcoming Star Wars movie? If answered after the December 18, which is the case, what did you think about the plot to the new movie?
I loved the plot.
We actually just watched it again
Yeah.
yesterday.
Also, spoiler alerts, I guess.
Yeah, so if you haven't watched, we're giving you all kinds of lead time here. If you haven't watched Star Wars,
And this is the last part of the podcast, so you just don't need to listen to it
don't even
anymore
listen
if
to
you
the
don't
rest.
need to. I loved the plot in that it was the same plot as the first Star Wars movie. There was almost no difference whatsoever.
yeah, it was new characters with the same plot.
Which isn't to say it was bad. I thought it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Actually. Because it's a great story. So, sure.
They definitely could have diversified the plot, but I mean, my guess is as to what they're trying to do is to basically tell fans who are disappointed in the second trilogy, the second to be released, that hey, we're going back to the way things used to be. Like to me, it was basically one big like symbol saying exactly that.
And literally word for word.
Like
Going-
word for
Yeah.
word.
right back to the beginning.
And so they recycled the plot. They brought in all the same special effects. They brought back every old character that could come across, including like Admiral Akbar was in there, or at least something of his species, right?
Right.
And he even had his fucking whatever line he says in this movie.
When he was like, their shields, something blasters of this magnitude.
Yeah, the line that everybody has now joked about since that movie forever ago.
Yeah.
You know, basically they copied it in there. So there a whole bunch of, it was mostly about making it very clear that they know who the fans are. So my hope is just that now in the next movie, they say, okay, now that we've sort of established this fact that we're going to try to do it the way everybody wanted it to be, in terms of expanding the Star Wars universe, now we're actually going to do it. And they'll actually go and make new plots that are in themselves interesting and different and so on. So we'll see. I mean, I have high hopes for it. And it was very entertaining and very well done as a remake of the first movie.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious that everybody's getting really fired up about spoilers for this when they've already seen this movie. Like, if they saw the first Star Wars movie, they've seen this movie.
You know what's going to happen.
There's no surprises here, folks. It's the same movie.
I do think
Death Star, they find a weak spot, they blow it up. There's father-son conflict.
There's Luke.
Who
is now a young woman instead of a young man, but still Luke Skywalker.
But there's also actual Luke who's now an old man instead of a young man.
He's Yoda now.
He's basically Yoda.
Yeah.
Well, I think my favorite part of what J.J. Abrams does really well for these, or whoever, however he directs these things. Maybe it's not him, but whoever the writers are on it. But he tends to do these little sort of one-off humanizing pieces where, for example, the scene where BB-8 rolls back and slides out his thumbs up, which is a fucking lighter.
That's still one of my favorite moments in the entire movie.
I also like the scene where Chewbacca was getting his shoulder wound tended to.
Yeah,
and that nurse is just like, "Ooh, that must have been very scary." And she's like, "Oh, you must be so brave." And he just nods.
Right.
They didn't need to be there. It didn't advance the story at all.
Yeah.
But it was just a funny moment where you get to see more of that character.
Yeah, and I think
awesome.
J.J. Abrams tends to do this. I've noticed this in Guardians of the Galaxy, which he did also, and with Star Trek. He does a lot of those actually in most of these movies because I think he understands what maybe most people don't, which is that we always want more of the actual characters, right?
Yeah, we want to be invested in the characters.
Yeah, and so these little character vignettes that literally serve no purpose from a plot standpoint serve a huge purpose as far as this sort of both the audience interaction with the characters and then also from a world deepening standpoint. Because seeing Chewbacca being treated by a human medic and this sort of hilarious, nurse being like, yeah, you're totally fine. This wasn't a big deal. And Chewbacca being like, oh, it's just a funny thing to see. And it suddenly breaks, it makes it seem like the world's way bigger, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. It's not just the story that you're looking at, but it's also all these sub-stories.
The characters aren't hollow things through which a story is.
I think it's like the equivalent of idle text for NPCs in a game, right? When they're done talking to you about the quest that they gave you, you can talk to them again and they'll have some goofy thing that they say,
right,
it's kind of revealing a little bit more about that character or something.
Right, these little vignettes. And I think that was actually my favorite part about the whole thing was all those, just watching all those sort of stack up. Because I thought they were absolutely hilarious, and the amount of work that they do that is totally different from, I thought that was actually the biggest difference, the biggest departure from the original Star Wars, which is frankly the general beat of it is here's a ton of exposition delivered by somebody about what's happening. And then here's a battle scene, and then here's some more exposition. It's not much of a story from an interactive point of view. You don't, until the end, you tend to not actually see the events that are the big events unfolding. You just kind of hear about them or about what caused these things to happen. And so to actually take that approach where that does happen in this movie, which is why I think it feels so much like the first ones. But then to take the approach of adding these little vignettes in, which don't do any of that at all. It's not an action sequence. It's not exposition. It's just there to sort of deepen the character. I think it's a fantastic move. So I loved it. That was great.
Yeah, I've seen it twice now.
Me too.
So still, I may even just see it a third time. It's a great movie. Yeah. So, all right, I think we will end on that. So everybody, thank you for listening. This has been Coffee with Butterscotch, and we will be back next week, I assume.
Presumably. Well, next week we'll be back to work.
Yes, so we'll definitely be back next week.
Yeah.
And if you want to check out our games, head over to games.bscotch.net. We also have forums over at forums.bscotch.net. And if you want to get your questions on next week's podcast, ask away at podcast.bscotch.net. All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace. Woo! My legs!